Hello and welcome. This is a special edition of Direct Talk. Today we have Getachew Reda, member of Tigray's Central Command. Getachew, thank you for being here with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, so in what it appears to be a retributive attack for its military defeat, Abiy bombarded the city of Maqala twice on Monday and once on Wednesday. So with the confirmed death of 3 civilians and injured many, first I'd like to give you an opportunity to express your condolences to the families of the victims, and also I want to ask you, were you surprised by the impunity of Abiy Ahmed?
Well, first and foremost, I would like to express my condolences to those who have lost their loved ones as a result of this heinous crime by Abiy Ahmed's mercenaries. Having said that, though, I wasn't surprised at all that this did happen, because Abiy has left no stone unturned to make sure the people of Tigray perished. Out of the last 11 months, there was no single day that Abiy didn't spend trying to make sure the people of Tigray do in fact face the kind of suffering that has been authored by his government and his partners in crime. His genocidal campaign against the people of Tigray has never relented, and he's been doing everything in his power to make sure that the people of Tigray continue to find themselves at the receiving end of his genocidal campaign. The fact that we were able to destroy most of his fighting capabilities in Tigray and hence able to liberate most of Tigray simply meant he had to continue his genocidal campaign against the people of Tigray through different means. Of course, the use of starvation as a weapon is a case in point, but as long as he saw an opportunity and opening for his army to unleash the kind of suffering and the kind of killing and carnage he always thinks the people of Tigray deserve for not saying yes to his whims, he would never stop at nothing to continue to do so. So the fact that he's launching airstrikes is only part of the entire anti-Tigray genocidal campaign and the entire military cum starvation as a weapon of war paraphernalia that has been perfected into an art form. So I wasn't surprised at all.
You have mentioned in your previous interviews that the aerial strikes in the Amhara region has started on the 7th of October. And were those round of military attacks targeted at military installation? And also, are his actions in Maqala an exception or the norm?
Well, what is little left of the Ethiopian Air Force is being used to terrorize populations after populations. There is no military logic to what they do as far as the use of military jets is concerned. In many parts in Amhara region, while the intention was to use aerial bombardments as part of their prelude to the all-out offensive they launched about 10 days ago, it was, however, clear that the jets that were deployed were dropping their bombs from really, really high above. Obviously, they wanted to avoid being hit by anti-aircraft guns on our side. And as luck would have it, as of course naturally as it gets, you wouldn't expect to hit military targets with planes such as Abiy has from really high above, from 7 kilometers high above, and expect to hit military targets. And in many parts of Amhara region, the targets were not military targets. It was mostly civilian installations, including civilians. And in many parts of Amhara region, in the forefronts, where the offensive was originally launched, there was a clear case of, I don't know if I have to call it friendly fire, because Abiy has never been friendly to anyone, including the people of Amhara, but there were clear cases of people being targeted, not just in Tigray, but also in Amhara region. So it's pretty much part of the norm than an exception. What transpired in Tigray is not an exception. But in terms of intensity and in terms of at least lack of any pretext whatsoever, the fact that he is targeting civilians in Tigray flies full in the face of any even pretense of targeting military installations. Because in the Amhara regions where the offensive was being launched, at least Abiy and company would have the excuse that to the extent that there was civilian casualties, it was probably as collateral damage, not part of a direct decision by the government. But in the case of Tigray, it's exceptional in the sense that it is being done with a clear understanding and with a clear knowledge that there is no military target in Tigray that could be legitimately considered target for aerial bombardment. It is a clear indication that Abiy would do everything in his power, would stop at nothing to terrorize the people of Tigray.
In your tweet addressing the airstrikes, you mentioned the evacuation of non-essential UN employees, and the UN has been evacuating much of its staff past week as operations have significantly reduced due to the siege on Tigray. Do you believe that Tigray has been abandoned by the international community in its time of need?
This question is a bit problematic for a number of reasons. For one thing, there is an obvious reason why the UN would be forced to draw down its staff, because of shortage of fuel, because of shortage of cash, and the very pressure that Abiy Ahmed and even UN addis have been mounting. UN Ethiopia, for a number of reasons, have been advertently or inadvertently been complicit with Abiy's crimes. I'm not saying they are responsible for whatever is happening in Tigray, but even their silence in a number of cases, even their direct complicity has meant Abiy was often given a carte blanche to do whatever he wants to do, especially in obstructing humanitarian aid. So there is sufficient reason why the UN would be forced to draw down its staff. But there is also something fishy. I am just hoping it's going to be a coincidence, but there is also something fishy in the sense that many UN agencies, if not all of them, especially non-Ethiopian staff members, I would say non-Tigrayan staff members, were told to evacuate well ahead of time, because there was clear information running around, which we have gathered from the international community grapevine, that they were told they had to avoid aerial bombardment and even an all-out offensive by Abiy Ahmed. Abiy is not the kind of person who would mince his words when it comes to declaring his intentions to the international community. So he was bragging to the international community that he would take over Mekelle in a matter of 10 days, and that this was part of, this is my understanding, it's not official government position, but this is my understanding, that the UN Ethiopia's decision to draw down its staff was also greatly influenced by the kind of bragging and bravado that Abiy nearly perfected into an art form. And yes, I would like to believe that it was a coincidence. There is also, like I said, something fishy about the timing and everything of the UN drawdown. But the fact that a significant number of UN expatriate staff have decided to stay behind, courageously decided to stay behind, simply means that Abiy couldn't get away with it, with his crimes. Maybe he was hoping that the departure of UN staff, especially expatriate staff, would mean there would be little in the way of corroboration of its crimes, because Abiy thinks by imposing an all-out blockade on the people of Tigray, including communications and media blockade, he could hoodwink the international community into believing that this was indeed a military target. But you know, if you noticed on Monday, there was conflicting information coming out of the government itself. On the one hand, the Ethiopian Air Force and the Defense Ministry declared that they had hit military targets, which obviously flew full in the face of the reality on the ground. But on the other hand, while they were bragging about having hit targets, the newly appointed government communications guy was given the very unenviable job of explaining away such a story, and he even had to deny that this aerial bombardment did indeed happen. But in the face of mounting evidence, satellite and all that, that this indeed did happen, Abiy had to retract his denial and then once again admit to having conducted the airstrikes. So in a single day, they had to come up with 3 different stories, once denying, and then bragging, and then confirming. So what that shows you is that he thought the absence of potential witnesses of such an attack would exculpate his regime from responsibility, but it wasn't meant to be.
Okay, so leaving the evacuation of the UN employees, do you believe that Tigray is abandoned by international community in the time of its need?
The international community has been paying lip service to the cause of Tigray. I can give you an example of what the Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been saying all along. He's been expressing his concern. He's been gravely concerned. He's been dismayed. He's been saddened. He's been, going through all kinds of emotional roller coaster ride. But whether that has translated into an actual action, I know the limits to what the UN system can do in this regard, but the fact that it was mostly a lip service to the cause of the people suffering in Tigray. Children are dying by their tens, by their scores now. Tomorrow it's going to be by their hundreds, if not by their thousands. In Tigray, it's quite exceptional. It's not just rural dwellers who, in any famine-like situation, who would face famine conditions. Urban dwellers in Tigray who could otherwise have survived with whatever income they have, savings they have in the banks, are suffering, even their children dying, because they don't have access to their money because banking services are absolutely cut off. So the kinds of situation we are witnessing in Tigray is quite unparalleled compared to the kind of famine-like conditions, they say, that the rest of the world might have witnessed so far. The UN has yet to come up with a clear position as to whether what is happening in Tigray is indeed famine. So they are using this semantic acrobatics where they refer to the situation as famine-like conditions, where in actual fact children are dying by their scores, like I said. And tomorrow it was going to be by their hundreds and by their thousands, by their tens of thousands. So to the extent that the UN system has not done enough to back its promise with action, I'm not putting the blame entirely on the UN system, because Abiy has told them point blank that he would not relent on his chokehold on Tigray unless some of his irrational demands are met. We are fighting because we have to break the siege that has been imposed on the people of Tigray. We are fighting not because we have territorial ambitions, not because we have ambitions of power. We have made it abundantly clear. We have none of those. We are fighting simply because our people are suffering, and we have to break the siege, possibly peacefully, if not will arm twist Abiy Ahmed into accepting our simple demands. Lift the siege. The people of Tigray are supposed to be his people too, right? So it does require an absolute genius to figure out why it is foolhardy to expect Abiy to relent on his chokehold while he has made it abundantly clear to none other than the Secretary General of the United Nations himself that he wouldn't relent unless his irrational demands are met. So to the extent that there is failure on the part of the international community, the UN system included, to take appropriate actions, I would say Tigray has been abandoned. But it would also be unfair for us to conclude that they haven't done anything at all, because in our times of need, many in the UN system have been consistently working with the people of Tigray, and we're absolutely grateful to that. And many in the international community have been consistent to a fault when it comes to expressing their support for the people of Tigray. So it would be unfair to conclude that the UN system or the rest of the international community has done nothing. But in the bigger scheme of things, expression of concern and expression of solidarity are not nearly enough. And to that extent, the people of Tigray, especially children of Tigray, have been abandoned.
So given the military advances of the Tigray's armed forces and political developments in recent weeks in the Ethiopia, is dialogue still on the table?
You see, our primary concern is the safety and security of the people of Tigray. We want to make sure the people of Tigray have the amenities that will help them survive the man-made famine they are facing, and catastrophe of biblical proportions is staring us in the eye, and we know thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives are in danger. So we'll negotiate with the devil if that's what it takes to ensure the safety and security of our people. But the most basic minimum, as far as we're concerned, is that any negotiation will come up with a direct and unconditional lifting of the siege on the people of Tigray. And there is no infrastructural challenge that stands in the way of the lifting of the siege. What it requires is a political decision on the part of a single individual, Abiy Ahmed, to just tell his lieutenants to go ahead with lifting the siege. As simple as that. So yeah, as long as it is going to be in the best interest of the people of Tigray, we'll be more than willing to sit with anyone and resolve this issue through dialogue. But we know, as the saying goes, it takes two to tango, and Abiy Ahmed has been adamant that the only solution to this problem is military one. And the military solution has proved absolutely elusive. And there is no chance whatsoever that Abiy can ever achieve his ambitions militarily. And as we speak, our forces are beating Abiy's forces black and blue. And there is no chance whatsoever that they could survive and live another day to come and terrorize the people of Tigray. So whether they like it or not, we'll continue to push to take whatever action is necessary to lift the siege, to break the siege imposed on the people of Tigray. And we'll continue to extend the olive branch, and at the same time use the sticks, which have so far proved more effective than the carrots. So if there is an opportunity that presents itself for us to sit and address this issue through dialogue, well and good. If it doesn't, we'll continue to use the sticks appropriately so we can break the siege and work with the international community to help them address the humanitarian challenge in Tigray. So the humanitarian challenge is also now engulfing the Amhara region, and we'll be more than willing to work with the international community, not only to support the people of Tigray, but also those in Afar, in Amhara, who also need humanitarian aid.
So Abiy Ahmed and perhaps even the international community seems to be under the impression that negotiation is on a valid point at any point during the conflict. So experts tell you that there's actually a tipping point. So in this case, it seems to be possible that Ethiopia could completely collapse, leaving Tigray no other side to negotiate with. So is this a scarier scenario to you?
Well, whether this is the scariest scenario or not is entirely academic as far as I'm concerned. The scariest scenario as far as I'm concerned is if we fail to do something about the siege and we have our tens of thousands of children dying needlessly. That would be the scariest scenario. And the next scariest scenario would be for us to be forced into taking the law into our own hands and go all the way, as they say, the other side of the Atlantic, go all the way, and the whole 9 yards, of course, go the whole 9 yards, and it will be very unfortunate. We will be forced, if we are forced into toppling the regime. We're not particularly interested in power, like I said, but if our engagement in South Wollo and Afar and other parts of the country where Abiy did launch, inadvertently of course, launch his offensive, and now we are in a counter-offensive mode, continues with the pace that is taking now, there is a distinct possibility that the country will end up in turmoil, because we'll have finished off the entire army, at least the most significant part of the army, and it is anybody's guess what is going to happen to Addis Ababa or the rest of the country. But we are also working closely with other organizations and other parties and other movements that that could contribute to mitigating the possible worsening of the situation one way or another. Otherwise, yes, there is a distinct possibility that Ethiopia could be engulfed in an interminable sort of chaos unless something is done about it.
Okay. My last question is that the African Union and other neighboring countries of Ethiopia have repeatedly offered to play the role of mediation in the ongoing conflict. What do you look for international partner looking to mediate in this conflict, and also what would you like them to know before taking this important role?
First, they need to understand the complexity of the situation on the ground. Some of them clearly are ready to read from Abiy's talking points. That is an absolute non-starter. Those who are in the business of saving Abiy, I don't think they will have any positive role to play here. Those who read from his talking points, I don't think they will have any positive and meaningful role to play. First order of business is to understand how complex the situation is, that Abiy has been part of the problem, and he was the first person responsible for everything that has transpired. And if you still think Abiy is the Nobel laureate who deserves to be praised to the skies and expect to resolve the Tigray crisis, which has been his creation in the first place, and then you're going to be in for disappointment, because that's not how you resolve a problem. And second, they need to have a clear sense of urgency with regard to what's at stake. What's at stake is the lives of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. What's at stake is the continuity of the Ethiopian state itself. What's at stake is a genocidal campaign spiraling out of control, threatening to engulf the entire country. If they don't have a clear understanding of those realities on the ground, there is no chance anyone with the best of intention, even with the best of intentions, can bring about lasting solutions to the problem. So yes, there is a clear proliferation of initiatives. I understand, especially neighboring countries are mostly interested in ensuring that the continuity of the Ethiopian state, because if Ethiopia collapsed on itself, then that would be very problematic. Yeah, we understand that. We also want to be part of the solution. But for them to assume that Abiy's mistakes are bona fide mistakes, mistakes done in good faith, as part of his well-intentioned moves to carry out some law enforcement mission, all that. If they insist on upholding those fictitious, rather self-serving theories being peddled by Abiy Ahmed and his enablers, they definitely will be in for disappointment. So our demands are quite simple. They should be able to understand the complexity of the problem, and they should be able to understand that Abiy has from the get-go been part of the problem. And third, they shouldn't read from Abiy's talking points. They should come up with original ideas of how they can deal with the problem in a manner that would benefit, first and foremost, those who have found themselves at the receiving end of Abiy's genocidal campaign, and second, something that would somehow salvage Ethiopia, the Ethiopian state, from absolute disintegration. If they are careful enough to take those into account, they will probably have achieved a modicum of meaningful result in their efforts. That much I can say.
Okay, Getachew, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That wraps up our program for today. I'm Sablor Lama with you. Thank you for tuning in.